The alarm shattered the silence of Sarah's bedroom like a jackhammer, echoing off the walls and piercing her dreams. She rolled over, eyes still heavy with sleep, and squinted at the blaring screen. Ugh, why today? She thought, already feeling the weight of an endless list of tasks piling on her shoulders. Each tick of the clock reverberated in her mind like a countdown to disaster. Dragging herself out of bed was akin to lifting a boulder. As she stumbled to the bathroom, her reflection in the mirror looked like a different persona stranger with disheveled hair and dark circles under her eyes. This cannot be how today starts, she moaned aloud, already anticipatory dread swirling in her stomach like a storm. She could almost hear the universe laughing at her predicament. The usual rituals felt monumental. Brushing her teeth became an epic battle, and washing her face took an eternity. But amidst her morning chaos, she spied Jake, her golden retriever, curled up on the rug, tail thumping in excitement. His big, warm brown eyes radiated pure love and unwavering support. Just seeing him had a miraculous effect on her. He was a living reminder that not all was lost. "Good morning, buddy," she said, forcing a smile despite the dark clouds hovering over her thoughts. As she knelt down to give him some affection, his fur felt like a comforting wool blanket against the biting chill of her anxieties. His enthusiastic tail wagging ignited a flicker of light in her heart, lifting her spirits, if only slightly. With Jake nibbling at her fingers, she made her way to the kitchen in search of coffee, the elixir that promised to revitalize her. The machine gurgled and hissed, offering its fragrant rewards as she rummaged through the cabinets for breakfast. But as she turned to grab her favorite mug, she heard a hollow sound, the unmistakable clatter of a dropped dog toy. "Oh no, Jake, what did you do?" she exclaimed, only to find him standing proudly next to a pile of his toys, having staged a little rebellion of his own. Chewed pieces lay scattered across the floor like confetti from a party that had long since ended. Jake, relishing his victory, looked as innocent as possible. As Sarah attempted to collect the remnants of his playful destruction, she felt a wave of frustration bubbling within. But how could she stay mad at that goofy face? He spun in circles, happy as a child with a new toy, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. She sighed, deciding to let go of her morning annoyance. After all, who needed perfection? Maybe a little chaos was just what she needed to shake off the clouds of her impending doom. She tossed Jake a squeaky toy, which he eagerly caught, the sound echoing around their small kitchen. Within moments, however, disaster struck again. In her attempt to pour coffee, her hand trembled, and a cascade of steaming liquid collided with her favorite blouse. She gasped as the fabric soaked up the hot coffee, a dark stain blooming like a watercolor beneath the kitchen lights. "This is not happening," she muttered to herself, running a damp cloth over the mess. But it seemed like fate had decided that today would not be kind. With a flick of her wrist, she sent the cloth flying in Jake's direction. He caught it midair, but rather than retrieving it like a good dog, he decided it was the perfect moment to start a game of tug-of-war. "Seriously, buddy?" She laughed, her frustration morphing into a reluctant chuckle as he danced around her, the cloth waving like a trophy in his mouth. As she wrestled him for it, a brief escape from her worries, the world outside was awakening in a cacophony of honks and chatter. Sarah glanced at the clock and felt the last shreds of patience snapping like an overstretched rubber band. "I'm going to be late," she exclaimed. Guilt tugged at her as she released the cloth to Jake, who scampered away, blissfully unaware of the chaos he inadvertently added to her morning. After a hasty shower and grabbing a quick breakfast, her mind raced through the tasks waiting at her workplace. Each breath felt heavier, each thought adding another layer of worry. As she prepared to leave, she set her gaze on Jake one last time before heading out. His big, soulful eyes seemed to understand her turmoil. "You've got this, girl," they whispered silently, bringing warmth to her heart. Once in the car, the weight of her day loomed ever larger. She navigated through traffic, the pressure to perform gnawing at her. With every red light, her anxiety crescendoed, feeding off the negativity swirling in her mind. What if the project wasn't finished in time? What if her boss had unrealistic expectations? The questions rolled through her head like a storm that showed no signs of subsiding. "Breathe, Sarah," she whispered to herself amidst the honking and hustle of the city. "Just breathe." She thought of Jake, and how he always seemed to know when she needed grounding. He'd wag his tail and would come by her side, making her forget the troubles of the world outside. If only she could bottle that feeling up. But as the day dragged on, she found herself wilting under the pressure. Meetings were grueling, and deadlines loomed like a dark shadow over her. Teeth clenched, she worked through lunch, fueled by caffeinated desperation and her overpowering desire to just get it right. She found temporary relief scrolling through her phone, watching short videos of dogs being, well, dogs. Their silly antics offered a sense of peace that felt like an oasis amidst a desert of obligations. Imagining Jake bounding towards her, all golden fur and joyful energy, kept her from losing it completely. Maybe we'll go for a long walk tonight, she mused, dreaming of the vastness of the park she could see in her mind's eye. A perfect escape from her chaotic day. If only the end of work could just come faster. As the clock finally ticked toward 5, a wave of relief washed over her. The traffic was thick, but the thought of seeing Jake kept her momentum alive. Arriving home felt surreal. The chaos still clung to her, but the anticipation of his tail-wagging welcome made her pulse quicken with happiness. "Hey, buddy, I'm home," she called, pushing the door open. And in that moment, all her worries faded, drowned out by the exuberant dance of her faithful companion, leaping into her arms like no time had passed at all. Even though her morning had been a whirlwind of frustrations, here she was, enveloped in the undeniable warmth of love that was always waiting for her at home. The long day at work, Sarah could feel the weight of the office air pressing down on her like a thick fog. Every inhalation felt labored, and the familiar sounds of typing, phones ringing, and murmured conversations echoed around her, amplifying the sense of claustrophobia that she fought to shake off. Morning coffee now felt like a distant memory, and her energy was waning faster than the dwindling sunlight outside. She sat at her desk, surrounded by piles of paperwork that seemed to multiply as the minutes ticked by. "Why is everything due today?" she muttered to herself, tapping her pen against her notepad, as if the rhythm would summon an answer from the ether. Each task felt like a mountain to climb, and just as she thought she'd reached the summit, another would appear, taller and rockier than the last. As she scrolled through an email from her boss, a pit formed in her stomach. "We need to check the projections by 3 p.m., it read in cold, efficient language. Panic surged through her veins. 3 p.m.? That's only a few hours away. She glanced at the clock, horror dawning on her. There were still so many unanswered questions and calculations left to tackle. The office felt unrelenting. Jessica, her colleague, stopped by her desk, sipping on a giant iced coffee. "Hey, Sarah, how's the project coming along?" She flashed a bright smile, unaware of Sarah's inner turmoil. It's a work in progress," Sarah replied, forcing a grin, even as her heart sank. "Just trying to figure things out," Jessica nodded, taking a sip of her drink. "Well, if you need any help, let me know." There was a genuine kindness in her offer, but Sarah could only nod politely, feeling the pressure tighten like a vice around her chest. "Thanks, Jess, I might take you up on that." But deep down, she felt she had to prove she could do this on her own. With a renewed resolve mixed with trepidation, Sarah dove back into her work. Hours melted away, each tick of the clock marking the countdown to 3 p.m. Each email felt like a reminder of her shortcomings, and the sound of the printer sputtering to life echoed like a cruel joke. She stood up to fetch some documents, but as she walked across the office floor, an unexpected wave of dizziness washed over her, making the fluorescent lights above flicker ominously. "Breathe," she whispered to herself, running water through her mind like a cleansing stream. Just then her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from her best friend, Rachel. "Hey, let's go out for dinner tonight. You need to unwind." The temptation to escape the office wrapped around her like a warm blanket. But as Sarah was about to respond, another email popped up on her screen, her boss's face staring back at her from the monitor. Reminder, projections by 3 p.m. The glow of the screen illuminated her mounting anxiety. She pushed her phone deeper into her pocket, the glow vanishing as the walls of responsibility closed in on her. If only Jake were here. His mere presence would cast away the dark clouds of anxiety looming in her mind. Time slipped through her fingers like sand, and soon it was nearly 2:30. Hyper-focused, she buried herself in numbers and charts, trying to make sense of everything before the deadline. Her neck ached, and her fingers felt stiff as she typed away. Suddenly, the entire room went silent. Even her colleagues had noticed the tension thickening the air. All eyes turned toward the conference room, where her boss had called an impromptu meeting. "Gather around, everyone," he said, his voice booming. The panic that shot through Sarah's body was visceral. Was she ready to present? She wasn't even invited to the meeting. Still, she shuffled into the room, her heart racing like a drum echoing in her chest. Her palms were clammy as she took her place in the back of the small crowd. As her boss spoke about new initiatives and future projections, Sarah's mind drifted. What if everything fell apart? What if she couldn't meet the deadline? The very thoughts felt like an avalanche, and suddenly, she was drowning in her worries. Just then, a tiny flicker of movement in her peripheral vision caught her eye. It was Jake, bounding towards her in her memory, tail swinging joyfully. In that moment, she felt warmth flood her heart, illuminating her dark thoughts. Picture him romping through the park, carefree and content, and everything else faded away. It gave her an earth-shattering clarity. Jake had an uncanny ability to remind her of the joyous things in life, to pull her back to solid ground. If only she could channel that energy now, she might find a way through her anxieties. The meeting droned on, and just as Sarah was about to zone out completely, a question directed at her jolted her back to reality. "Sarah, any thoughts on the projections?" Her boss's eyes bore into her, and the room fell silent, awaiting her response. Panic swept through her, and she barely registered the question. Yes. She stumbled, her voice barely rising above a whisper. But then something remarkable happened. She recalled Jake's playful demeanor, how his happiness radiated even in the face of chaos. "We should consider more realistic targets that reflect our current market conditions," she blurted out, managing to regain a semblance of composure. To her surprise, heads nodded in agreement. Bolstered by the spirit of her buddy back at home, she delved deeper into the topic, framing her argument with confidence. The words flowed like a stream breaking a dam, and when she finished, the silence shifted. Sarah felt a surge of unexpected triumph, the anxiety that had paralyzed her mere moments ago dissipating into thin air. Her boss's surprise looked almost comical. He seemed genuinely impressed. "Good insight, Sarah," he replied, and the room erupted in murmurs of approval. They returned to discussing figures and projections, and for the first time since morning, Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration. Maybe she could get through this after all. With renewed energy, she dove back into her work once the meeting was over. The clock ticked closer to 3 p.m., and she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She attacked her figures with the veracity of someone on a mission. Each click of the keyboard felt like a celebration of overcoming her doubts. But just as her optimism grew stronger, a new email notification slid through her screen like a winter chill. Reminder, all submissions due now. "Where's the report?" Her heart sank as the words stared back at her. A bitter reminder of the chaos still swirlings. No, not now, she thought, trying to quell the panic creeping back into her consciousness. She was in the zone, but this latest curveball threatened to derail her momentum. Sarah's pulse quickened as she frantically clicked through documents, searching for the right report. The numbers began dancing on the screen, blurring together in a haze of confusion. What once felt triumphant now smelled of impending doom. In desperation, she shot a quick message to Jessica, who had kindly offered her help earlier. "Need a lifeline. Can you assist with the numbers?" The seconds felt like hours as she awaited a response. "On my way," Jessica replied almost immediately, but time was ticking, and every second felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Sarah could feel the walls closing in again, every hectic minute counting down to disaster. But before she could spiral back into despair, she spotted a familiar face approaching her desk. Jessica breezed in, bright-eyed and full of energy. "What's on your plate?" she asked, her tone upbeat despite the palpable tension. "The report, it's..." Sarah started, feeling overwhelmed again. But Jessica leaned in, her enthusiasm invigorating. "We'll get through this. Just tell me what you need and we can finish it together." A rush of relief surged through Sarah. With each moment they collaborated, the figures fell into place, and the fog that had suffocated her began to clear. As the clock struck 3, they were just wrapping up, the report practically completed. "Oh my gosh, you did it!" Jessica beamed, a look of triumph on her face. "You just needed a little support." In that instant, Sarah felt a shift within her. She had worked hard, and sometimes that support came in countless forms: friends, dogs, even a little shared laughter. As they submitted the report together, the weight that had previously felt crushing lifted, lightness replacing it in waves. Once finished, Sarah's eyes drifted toward her phone. "Let's go grab that dinner after work," she texted Rachel, a smile spreading across her lips. The horrors of the morning faded into the background, replaced by a burgeoning sense of accomplishment. As she turned her focus toward Jake waiting at home, excitement bubbled in her chest. Despite the day's trials, she felt a wicked sense of triumph ignite, not just for tackling the deadline, but remembering that with the right support, chaos could forge connections, both with others and herself. One bounce of Jake's tail, and she knew that life was full of the unexpected. And maybe, just maybe, it was all going to be okay. A sudden downpour. With the workday behind her, Sarah was practically buzzing with a mix of triumph and relief. The weight of the world had lifted off her shoulders like a heavy fog burned away by the sun. She grinned as she drove home, suggestions of a fun evening swirling in her mind. Perhaps she could take Jake to the park and let him run wild, embracing all of the raw energy he always seemed to possess. But as she neared her neighborhood, a sudden flicker in the sky caught her eye. A thick blanket of gray clouds loomed ominously, their threatening edges swelling like an approaching monster. "Just great," she muttered, anxiety bubbling back up. Rain would put a damper on any plans for a fun-filled evening with her dog. Pulling into her driveway, she caught sight of Jake through the window. He was watching her arrival, his tail wagging like a propeller, blissfully unaware of the impending storm. "Hey, buddy, ready for an adventure?" she called, trying to maintain her earlier enthusiasm. But the clouds were gathering, and she could feel the weight of the atmosphere shift around her. As she opened the door, the wind howled, sending a shiver down her spine. Jake bounded to her side, nearly jumping into her arms, a reassuring comfort amidst the brewing chaos outside. "Let's take a quick walk before it pours," she decided, feeling a swell of courage well up inside her. After all, a little rain never hurt anyone, right? Arming themselves with a floppy raincoat that barely fit Jake and an umbrella, the duo stepped out into the growing tempest. The cool, fresh air invigorated Sarah, and the rhythmic tapping of rain on their umbrella was surprisingly soothing. Jake pranced ahead, leaping into puddles with glee, his spirit brightening the otherwise dreary day. But as they ventured further into the park, the clouds darkened, and an ominous rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Sarah glanced up, anxiety creeping back in. Maybe we should head back, she thought, fear threading through her thoughts. But Jake seemed undeterred, blissfully shouting to the world that he was alive, this was his kingdom, and nothing was going to ruin his adventure. Just then, the torrential rain descended, drenching them in an instant. It felt like the sky had exploded, and Sarah could hardly keep her balance as the winds kicked up around her. "Jake, come back," she called. But he was off, a blur of fur and laughter delighting in the downpour. With the rain pouring relentlessly, Sarah felt a surge of panic. She sprinted after him, slipping in the mud but not daring to stop, worried he might venture too far. It seemed they were the only ones in the park. A captivating world now transformed into a surreal landscape if they were the last two souls alive. "Jake," she shouted, her voice swallowed by the rain. He stopped suddenly, turning to face her, his energetic spirit as radiant as the sun peeking through the clouds. But at that moment, something remarkable happened. Out of the chaos, a small boy appeared, his little frame barely visible through the mist. "Watch out," the boy yelled, pointing into the distance. Sarah followed his gaze and saw a massive branch breaking loose from a nearby tree, tumbling down straight toward Jake. Time froze. Every inch of her body screamed. She bolted forward, calling out to Jake, but in the sheer pandemonium, everything felt muted and slow. "Jake, move!" she screamed, her heart racing as she reached out. In a heartbeat, Jake sensed her urgency, the playful spirit transforming into something deeper. He leaped aside just in time, narrowly avoiding the tree branch that crashed down where he had been standing only seconds earlier. Her heart pounded in her chest as she threw herself in front of him, that motherly instinct flaring wild within her. She scooped him up, trembling limbs and rhythmic breaths mixed together in a whirl of emotions, hitting her like the rain splattering around them. "Are you okay?" she gasped, checking for injuries, relief washing over her as she saw only confusion in his big brown eyes. The boy approached hesitantly, his eyes wide. "I didn't want him to get hurt," he said, his small voice barely audible above the storm. "You saved him. Thank you for warning me," she replied, breathless but grateful. The mixture of joy and terror coursed through her as she realized how thin the line was between laughter and fear, between safety and danger. They stood there in the deluge, two souls united by a narrow escape. Just then, a crack of thunder boomed overhead, jolting them both. The boy flinched and turned to run, parents appearing in the distance, their figures emerging like shadows in the storm. "Mom, Dad!" he shouted, and Sarah felt a rush of protectiveness well beyond the ordinary, as if Jake had connected her to something larger. "Let's get you and the pup home," she called after him, realizing she needed to get out of the storm. With Jake cradled in her arms, the way home felt less intimidating now. They hurried towards her house, laughter echoing through their efforts to outrun the deluge. Once indoors, they shed the rain like a second skin, panting and dripping wet. She looked down at Jake, who shook his coat vigorously, sending droplets flying everywhere. "You silly boy," she laughed, ruffling his fur. "You just love creating chaos, don't you?" She pulled a towel from the closet, wrapping it around him as they settled on the couch, the rain still pouring outside, a steady rhythm of nature's tears against the window. Her heart had settled back into its normal pace, but the rush of adrenaline still coursed through her both from the storm and the near-miss incident. As she dried Jake, the doorbell chimed, slicing through the quiet atmosphere. "Who could that be?" she murmured, surprised. Probably a neighbor seeking shelter from the storm. She opened the door to find the boy from the park, his parents hovering behind him, concern etched on their faces. "We just wanted to check if you are all right," the father said, looking a bit bewildered. "Thank you so much for checking on us," Sarah replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We had quite the adventure back there," the boy interrupted with wide eyes. "You saved Jake. You were so brave." She knelt down beside him, still holding Jake close. "Well, he's my best buddy. I'd do anything for him," the boy beamed, and Sarah could see his admiration shine bright. The mother, a bout of relief grazing her features, smiled as she watched the interaction. "It's wonderful to see such a bond between you." "Thanks," Sarah said, realizing the warmth of connection anchored her amidst the rain and chaos. "Jake's my lifesaver." They chatted for a few moments, sharing stories of their dogs and families. The storm raged outside, but inside laughter filled the room. Perhaps the small boy was right. Perhaps it was bravery. She felt empowered, liberated in sharing her world with others. Eventually, the family bid farewell, promising to look for them again at the park when the weather cleared. As they departed, Sarah stood in the doorway, feeling newly invigorated. The bond she shared with Jake had paved the way for new friendships, and she cherished that sentiment. Closing the door, she walked back to the couch, her spirit rejuvenated. Jake nestled against her, his warmth wrapping around her like a soft blanket. "Okay, buddy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "What should we do now that we're stuck inside?" The wind howled against the windows, but Sarah no longer felt trapped. The storm had brought not just rain, but connection and magic, not through grand gestures, but through sheer moments of bravery and care. She turned on the TV, settling into the comfort of home and the company of her faithful friend. As they watched the rain wash away the chaos outside, Sarah felt different. Maybe everyone had storms to weather, but sometimes those very storms brought unexpected adventures and new beginnings. She wrapped her arms around Jake, pulled him close, and in that quiet moment, she knew this wasn't just about surviving the day. It was about embracing every drop and every connection that came with it, an unexpected encounter, the storm settled into a steady drizzle, painting the world outside with a soft, muted hue. Comfortable on the couch, Sarah relished the warmth that enveloped her as she snuggled deeper into the blanket with Jake. The rain tapped against the windows like a rhythmic melody. It sounded both soothing and invigorating. For the first time that day, she felt at peace. But there was something still lingering in the air, a sense of anticipation that she couldn't quite shake off. Perhaps it was the remnants of adrenaline still coursing through her veins after the near miss at the park, or the excitement about the friendship blossoming with the boy and his parents. Each raindrop seemed to remind her of the connection she was forging, and it filled her heart with an unexpected warmth. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table, jolting her from her peaceful reverie. She reached for it, arching an eyebrow as she noticed a message from Rachel. "Hey, heard about the storm. Are you safe? Let's have a girls' night soon." A smile crept across her face. Rachel always knew how to lift her spirits, and the idea of laughter and camaraderie brightened her mood. Sarah quickly typed back, assuring her friend that they were safe and that a girls' night was definitely in order. As she hit send, the soft glow of the living room lights flickered momentarily. "What was that?" she wondered, glancing at Jake, who seemed equally perplexed by the sudden disruption. Just then, there came an ominous rumble, a low growl of thunder that rattled the windows, reminding her of the ferocity of the weather outside. Her thoughts drifted back to earlier, to the boy who had warned her about the falling branch, his wide eyes brimming with both fear and admiration. She found herself grinning, remembering the spark of connection they shared amid chaos. Perhaps tonight was not just about waiting out the storm. It was an opportunity to forge new friendships, welcoming smiles, laughter, and shared moments into her life. But the moment was interrupted as the lights flickered again, followed by another clap of thunder that sent Jake scampering beneath the coffee table. "Jake, come here, buddy!" she laughed, reaching out to comfort him. However, the flickering lights then went dark, plunging the room into unsettling silence. "Of course, the power goes out now," Sarah muttered, quickly feeling her way to the kitchen to grab some candles. The storm outside intensified, wind howled, and rain lashed at the windows with renewed vigor. By the time she lit the candles, a soft, flickering glow filled the room, casting dancing shadows along the walls. Jake, still nervous, finally emerged slowly from his hiding spot, aware of the comforting glow that illuminated the space. "It's just us, Jake. We're safe," she assured him, kneeling to stroke his fur. He leaned into her touch, settling against her leg with a content sigh. The atmosphere felt charged, a cocktail of excitement and unease. Amidst the quiet, she grabbed her phone again to check for messages, only to find that the network was down. "Just perfect," she sighed. But instead of despair, Sarah felt an unexpected thrill at the solitude. The world outside had transformed into a cocoon of intimacy, with only Jake and her in it. Out of nowhere, a loud crash echoed from outside, snapping her back to reality. She rushed to the window, peering through the rain-soaked glass. Instincts kicked in. What was that? She strained to see, her heart racing. A flicker of movement caught her eye, and she squinted harder, realization dawning on her. Something had fallen from the tree lined in front of her house. With adrenaline pumping, Sarah grabbed a flashlight and pushed through the back door, Jake at her heels, his senses heightened as he sensed her unease. The world outside was a blurred marvel in enveloping mist and the rhythmic drumming of rain. "Watch your paws, Jake," she called, navigating the slippery ground cautiously. As they approached the fallen branch, she could see it clearly now. It wasn't just a fallen branch, it was part of a larger tree that had been uprooted and lay sprawled over the sidewalk. But there in the shadows beyond, she froze. Something was moving. "Hello?" She called out tentatively, her voice swallowed by the sound of the pouring rain. A faint whimper echoed back from the darkness, and her heart raced. "Jake, stay with me," she instructed, keeping a firm grip on his leash. As she stepped closer to the fallen tree, the flashlight beam danced across the ground, revealing something small and trembling, a puppy, no more than a few months old, ensnared beneath the boughs. Its wide eyes glimmered with fear, and it struggled against the weight above it. "Oh my gosh," Sarah gasped, rushing forward. "It's okay, little one." She knelt beside the puppy, gently pushing the debris aside. The moment released in a flurry of motion, and she could see clearly now. The puppy was scared, wet and trembling, but alive. Suddenly, the puppy looked up at her, and a spark ignited in its brown eyes, almost mirroring Jake's. "I've got you," she whispered reassuringly. With a final push, she lifted the last of the branch away, and the puppy sprang free into her arms, tail wagging like an excited little propeller. "Oh, you poor thing," she said, cradling the soaked pup against her chest. Jake sniffed curiously at the newcomer, and Sarah felt a rush of warmth wash over her. "We need to get you inside, little one." They hurried back to the house, water pooling at their feet as they dashed through the rain. Once back inside, Sarah set the puppy down on the rug, instantly wrapping it in a towel. Jake, ever the curious type, circled around, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "Hi there," Sarah cooed, inspecting the tiny creature. "What's your name? You must be scared." The puppy whimpered softly, but a light flickered in its eyes, an unmistakable will to survive. "I guess we'll call you Stormy, since you came in with all this rain," she decided with a smile, and the small puppy licked her hand in response, tail wagging. Jake seemed to approve. "Jake, meet Stormy," Sarah announced, and as if on cue, the two pups engaged in a playful romp, their energies lifting the weight of the storm bombarding the world outside. But as they played, Sarah felt a tingling sensation at the back of her mind, and just then, an unsettling thought crept in. What if Stormy's owners were worried sick? A puppy this small couldn't have been out here alone for long. Okay, let's do this. We'll look for some signs tomorrow," she promised the little pup. "For now, let's get you something to eat while we wait for the storm to pass." She fetched some food for both dogs, their tails wagging in unison as they assumed their best, "please feed me" faces. As she watched them eat, an overwhelming sense of fulfillment bloomed within her. She realized that the evening had taken a turn she could not have anticipated. Nature had conspired not only to bring fear, but also love, friendship, and connection. As the storm raged on outside, Sarah felt a sense of tranquility and purpose settle within her heart. Even amidst the chaos, beauty waited to be uncovered. The fabric of her night had woven itself into something far beyond the ordinary, a moment of magic amid the tempest. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by an ear-splitting clap of thunder that shook the walls. Both Jacob and Stormy yelped, seeking warmth and security in Sarah's arms. "It's okay. I've got you," she assured them, hugging the two pups tightly as they snuggled into her lap. But in the middle of the comforting chaos, Sarah's phone buzzed again from the coffee table, jolting her thoughts back. She reached over with cautious fingers, glancing at the screen. A message from Rachel read, "Storm's getting worse and the power is out at my place. Can I come over?" Sarah's heart raced. "Of course. It's crazy here, but we're safe." "Come on over," she replied, her excitement competing with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Moments later, she was confronted with the complexities of chaos, an impromptu gathering amid the storm with an unexpected guest. 3 dogs and the promise of laughter and warmth. She couldn't help but wonder how this night would play out. As the wind howled and rain lashed against the windows, Sarah could feel the storm transforming. What once felt like a looming chaos now enveloped her in a cocoon of connection and friendship. A light knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Rachel, is that you?" Sarah called, rushing to open it. The door swung open, and in came Rachel, soaked to the bone but glowing with excitement. "I made it," she exclaimed, shaking rainwater off like a dog. The moment felt electric, and as Rachel knelt down to greet Jake and Stormy, Sarah realized this was just the beginning. With laughter erupting amid the roaring storm outside, they began plotting together, sharing stories, comparing puppy antics, and finding solace in one another's company. Jake and Stormy danced around them, their playful antics reflecting the burgeoning joy within Sarah's heart. A fire sparked in every corner of the room, igniting a celebration of friendship just when she had begun to doubt herself. As the storm raged on and night closed in around them, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her, a sudden understanding that sometimes chaos was merely the precursor to something beautiful. And as laughter filled their home, she could see that love and connection were more powerful than any storm, illuminating the darkness that often loomed over life. But little did she know, as the storm howled and raindrops cascaded down the windows, that the night was just beginning to unfold its mysteries, promising surprises that would take her breath away. An unexpected turn in her story awaited her just outside the door, and she had no idea what awaited them next.